Hello and welcome to a tactical history of Liverpool. After back-to-back wins over Chelsea either side of Christmas, Liverpool drew 0-0 against Everton in the New Year's Eve Merseyside derby, ending the year in second, 2 points behind leaders Manchester United with a game in hand. Liverpool's first game of 1967 was hosting West Ham United at Anfield. Since joining the Football League after the First World War, West Ham had spent most of their time in the second division. For 30 years they were managed by former player Sid King, and during his tenure West Ham were promoted to the First Division and even made it to the FA Cup final in 1923. King was sacked the season after getting relegated in 1932 though, and was dead within a month. King had always liked to drink, but he could no longer really be classed as a functioning alcoholic after the team's relegation, suffering from depression and, according to his son, paranoid delusions. Having already suffered their 9th loss of the season by early November, King was suspended for being drunk and insubordinate, and in January his contract was terminated permanently, with the club suggesting, although never confirming, that King had been siphoning off the club's funds for himself. A month later, King had killed himself. King was replaced by his assistant Charlie Painter. Painter had been on West Ham's books as a player. He had never played for the first team, forced into retiring after a knee injury. He would remain in charge for 18 years, although he was never able to get West Ham promoted back to the First Division. Upon Painter's retirement, it was again left to the assistant to take over. Ted Fenton had been a West Ham player for all his career, until leaving for a brief spell as player-manager of Colchester United, but would return to the Irons in 1948 before becoming manager 2 years later. After many years of mid-table finishes, Fenton finally got West Ham promoted back to the First Division in 1958. However, he would leave 3 years later in mysterious circumstances. The club would publicly state that Fenton had been working under quite a strain, and it was agreed that he should go on sick leave. However, several players have suggested otherwise. Malcolm Allison said they were rebuilding the stand and he was pinching some bricks and paint, putting it in the back of the car. One of the directors caught him. Whereas Ken Tucker claimed Fenton had negotiated a reduction in the price of some equipment, but only passed on some of the savings to the club, pocketing the difference. For the first time in the club's history, West Ham went looking outside the club for a successor, choosing Ron Greenwood. Greenwood had joined Chelsea as an amateur, but the Second World War disrupted his playing career, and it wasn't until he joined Bradford Park Avenue in 1945 that he would turn professional. After 3 years at his boyhood club Brentford, Greenwood rejoined Chelsea, where he won the league under Ted Drake, before retiring a year later. Upon his retirement, Greenwood turned his attention to coaching. He had brief spells in non-league football and with the English youth teams before becoming assistant manager at Arsenal, but in 1961 West Ham were willing to give him full control. Somewhat ironically, given he was a break from West Ham's typical approach of promoting from within, it is the style set out by Greenwood that we associate with the West Ham tradition today. Greenwood was something of a football purist, insisting that his team play attractive attacking football. The players expected to work with the ball and have the confidence to express themselves.
Well, Ron Greenwood, I think, was the person who really introduced the West Ham philosophy of the football that they played, and I think a lot of supporters of other clubs, one of their second or third clubs is often West Ham because of the style of football they play. It's entertaining and attacking, and Ron's whole coaching beliefs really centred in training around working with the ball, being comfortable in possession, getting good habits, passing, control, and really attacking.
He was heavily influenced by the Hungarian mighty Magyars side that had thrashed England in 1953. He saw in the way Hungary not only controlled and passed the ball, but the way they moved off of it, the future of football, and developed his team based on these ideas.
At that time, I somehow knew there was more about football than just running around a track, you know? And watching them that day epitomised to me what I felt football was all about. It was to do with thought, it was to do with movement.
There's an exhibition of ball control from the inside left Puskas.
The movement and the passing was so precise, and the shooting and everything, but I don't think people saw what was happening off the ball. They're only seeing people on the ball, and they could see big triangles. And then English football went through a stage of, where the triangles were stationary, and the art of football is to move triangles about, and keep them going, and that's what they did that day. It had a great influence on me, and I remember I thought that's the way the game should be played. And
Greenwood led West Ham to their first trophy when they won the FA Cup in 1964, and the next year they would win the European Cup Winners' Cup. In the league they were much less successful though, usually finishing in mid-table. Coming into this match, for example, despite having 3 key players from England's World Cup win that summer, West Ham were only 10th. West Ham were admired for the way they played the game, but they were also considered soft touches by many. With Greenwood's insistence on fair play, they were often easily bullied, and so rarely threatened the top clubs. Ron Greenwood said he felt we were getting a team of nice lads together, said Captain Bobby Moore. I sat and wondered who the hell had ever won anything in football with 11 nice people. Moore also felt that Greenwood's man management was lacking. The lads would come in the dressing room with their heads down and he would say we would talk about it on Monday. Why wait? Tell me what I did wrong. Tell another one he can't bloody play. Tell that player he bottled it. He knew all right. No man never saw so much in a game as Ron Greenwood, but motivation was not his strength. God knows I played with enough who weren't good enough. There was a drinking culture among the players which didn't help matters either. Greenwood wanted players to accept responsibility for themselves, said Jeff Hurst, but there were risks involved. Players let him down. Some let him down spectacularly, none more so than Bobby Moore. A heavy drinker, West Ham's captain wasn't exactly setting a great example to the younger players of the club. Despite West Ham's recent success, Moore had wanted to move to Tottenham in early 1966, where he believed he had a better chance of winning the league, but West Ham refused to sell. Having allowed his contract to expire, Moore only signed a new one upon realising that he was technically ineligible to play for England at the World Cup unless he did so, with Alf Ramsey intervening to help patch up the differences between Moore and Greenwood. Moore had only re-signed because he was essentially forced to, however, and his relationship with the club had soured. West Ham had won trophies recently, and 3 other players had played major roles in England's World Cup glory. This should have been a time for the club to push onwards and upwards, but they weren't. They had impressed going forward so far this season. They lost to Leicester City the week before, the first time they have failed to score all season.
62 goals West Ham have got in 24 games, 11 more than any other club in the First Division.
But only 3 teams had conceded more goals than West Ham. They lined up in a 4-2-4 shape, making just one change from the team that lost to Leicester, with Jack Burkett replacing John Charles at fullback. Liverpool also set up in a 4-2-4 formation, again keeping the same lineup we saw in episodes 12 and 13, as they defended their title. Liverpool took control of the game early on. In the middle of winter the pitch was muddy again, although not quite as boggy as Stamford Bridge in episode 13. Liverpool stuck to their passing play though. They showed calm in possession, taking good care of the ball rather than panicking and hoofing it long. West Ham on the other hand kept giving it away, handing possession back over to Liverpool. Some of this was just sloppy play from the Hammers, but much of it was forced by Liverpool. Several times Liverpool were able to pressure West Ham players, forcing them into hurried passes that went to red shirts instead. Jeff Hurst tried to do the same a few times for West Ham, but he was the only man trying to do so, meaning Liverpool could easily play around him. Instead, West Ham generally dropped deep when they didn't have the ball, which opened up space in midfield for Liverpool to use. Tommy Smith would push forward to use this space, but despite him looking calm under pressure, his passing when he had a bit more time to actually pick out a pass was poor in this match. Gordon Milne was more productive. He repeatedly picked up the ball in midfield with space ahead of him, so he simply pushed forward into it, breaking through the West Ham lines. Ian Callaghan also used the space to pick up the ball, before running at defenders and crossing. It was Peter Thompson that caught the eye though. He was more direct than usual in this game, looking to beat his man at speed rather than his usual twisting and turning, and often cutting inside onto his right foot to shoot at goal. Before too long he was coming inside into the middle as usual, and it was from here that he gave Liverpool the lead. With West Ham players backing off to defend their box, Thompson was given acres of space on the edge of the area to receive the ball from Willie Stevenson, before pushing forward and drilling a low shot past Jim Standen. 5 minutes later he doubled Liverpool's lead. West Ham had possession, but a poor touch allowed Callaghan to step in and rob the ball. Milne and Jeff Strong pushed forward through the middle, drawing the West Ham players inside, before releasing Thompson in space on the left. The winger shot at goal, hitting the post, but it rebounded straight back to him, and with some quick feet he beat his man and cut back onto his right foot, before shooting into the roof of the net. West Ham had started to get into the game prior to the goals, getting the ball forward with some neat passing. However, they wasted it whenever they got into the Liverpool third. Martin Peters kept shooting weakly from distance, while John Sissons and Peter Braybrook's crossing was consistently poor. Not much changed in the second half. With a comfortable lead to protect, Liverpool were happy to sit back and soak up pressure, and West Ham didn't appear to have any ideas to combat this. Hurst was now dropping off the front line, helping to work the ball into attack through the midfield. However, most of the time West Ham's attacks were just them firing poor shots from way out. It was still Liverpool that looked likelier to get the next goal. Liverpool easily held out to claim the 2 points, seeing them leapfrog Manchester United to go top of the league. Liverpool's campaign to defend their title was going well. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to support the channel. You can get updates on what I'm doing by following on Twitter and Facebook, links are in the description, but most importantly by supporting Holding Midfield on Patreon. Without financial support, I can't justify the time it goes into making these videos, so we keep the channel alive while also receiving access to premium content. Thanks for watching.